Hello there, my very good friends. On today's wrestling news, are AEW giving wrestlers with expiring contracts the silent treatment?
Why Joey Janela had backstage heat in AEW.
A new champion was crowned on last night's AEW Dynamite, and we will tell you which one.
And one of the hottest free agents is in talks with All Elite Wrestling. I'm Adam Wilborn.
And I'm Andy Murray.
And this is the news.
And we're going to kick things off with more from Joey Janela, who we discussed yesterday, following it came out before the Denise Salcedo interview was released. She tweeted out that Joey had revealed that he wasn't re-signing with AEW. So we spoke about that yesterday. And of course, yesterday as well, the interview itself actually came out. And there's a lot of stuff in here, including the suggestion from Joey that after a while, after a certain incident that you're going to talk about, AEW stopped communicating with him. And it wasn't the only guy on an expiring contract who they've done that with, according to Joey. So I'll just read the quote here. Basically, he's talking about having a string of bad luck throughout his AEW career, and then the thing that you're going to talk about, we probably should have structured this better. Who cares?
It's a hell of a tease, this.
It really is. But the thing that you're going to talk about might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but Joey couldn't confirm this with the office because they didn't communicate with him. Here's the rest of it. They did the same thing to Marco Stunt. They just stopped talking to him. But I appreciate them. If you have talent relations, I know Christopher Daniels would love nothing more than to tell me I am no longer with the company. But it is what it is. I'm not sad. I'm not mad. I'm not mad at anyone. I had a wonderful experience. So it's a broadly positive interview about his time in AEW, and he's talking about going back to the indies where he feels he's going to make just as much money. It's going to be harder work, but he's kind of taking control of his own destiny. He's learned a lot there.
I thought you were going to say something different then.
What?
I thought you were going to say he's controlling his own narrative. I'm sorry. You know the rules, Andy, for the news and for them.
I think we should retire the word control in that case. But so the obviously Joey's out of the company. He's not renewing. His contract expires the 1st of May, he says. So Marco Stunt's an interesting one. He hasn't been on TV in ages. He's no longer affiliated with Jurassic Express. That kind of stopped when Christian buddied up with the gang. We reported earlier this year that we covered a report, stating that his contract was up later this year. And if they've just stopped talking to him as well, you can kind of put two and two together on that. Although it should be noted that Marco's AEW status is currently unclear.
But this did stuff with The Voice, wasn't he?
He was,
on Twitter about
he's
that,
quite a good singer, actually.
Is he?
Yeah, if you're like into like Ed Sheeran's strummy stuff, he's pretty good.
Obviously, I am.
Yeah, they are. And but like, just look at some of the other things that have happened recently. Okay, Chavo. You can decide whether or not you think Chavo Guerrero is a reliable narrator. But of course, when he was quietly removed from the AEW roster, he said, Tony Khan said I had a job when I came back from Young Rock Season 2. A bit of confusion there. Clearly, a spot of bad communication going on there, because Tony later came out and said, he was on a week-to-week contract, but I owe him a call.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the Big Swole situation, whereby she came out in December and said, we're parting, it's mutual, etc., no ill will. Later, Tony made that very dumb tweet of his, saying he let go of Swole because he felt her wrestling wasn't good enough. This was after, of course, Swole has spoken out on her perceived lack of opportunities for African-American athletes in AEW. So there's clearly some screwy communication going on here. And in my view, if you're giving people the silent treatment when they're on an expiring contract and you just stop communicating with them, that's not good practice.
No. I think what we said before, it's all well and good. It's far better, as we often say. It's a completely different kettle of fish to not necessarily even release someone, just let someone's contract expire, than fire someone in the midst of a global pandemic.
There's a huge
with
difference.
Record profits and when you don't actually need to release them for budget cuts. But still, it's still not the best strategy to just stop talking to them. Just say to them, look, I think you can probably tell we're only really utilising you maybe a little bit on Dark or whatever. So we've got a lot of people. We've got some plans for other people. We'd love you to stay in touch, but we're probably not going to be renewing contracts in a few months. Rather than what I can only describe as Tony Khan's, is it office space strategy? Is that all right? Where they just stop paying someone, steal his stapler, and then hope that they just won't show up to AEW anymore. It's a weird thing.
Do you reckon he put Joey Janela stapler in a meatball
Yes.
in the office? It's strange. When you have four similar stories of weird communication or communication that's inconsistent, it becomes kind of almost like a trend. So here's hoping that if there is an internal issue here, it's resolved. Because if you were getting if you put yourself in the wrestler's shoes, if you had an expiring contract and you want to know about your future and the bosses just stop talking to you, it's not a nice position to be in. For sure.
And part of the reason you mentioned there for Joey Janela perhaps not getting his contract renewed is due to backstage heat, and he continued on that brilliant podcast and interview with Denise Salcedo to sort of explain why he thought maybe he did have some backstage heat. It refers back to a dark taping on the 8th of January where he accidentally went a little bit too hard when kicking Eddie Kingston and broke his orbital bone. Always sounds like one of the worst injuries to get. Yeah. I mean, you get a cool mask to wear, but it must suck. Which delayed, obviously, Eddie Kingston's ongoing feud with Chris Jericho, which obviously culminated at Revolution just a few weeks back. But he said, I think they had plans for me. Tony kept on saying, after this, we'll bring you back to TV. But unfortunately, I think a lot of it has to do with the situation where I worked with Eddie Kingston, and I super kicked him in the face a little bit too hard, came in a little bit too hot. Basically, he'd been squatting. He didn't know his own strength.
Building up them legs.
Indeed.
I like it. I don't like Eddie Kingston getting injured, obviously.
And as Andy said, he was going into a feud with Chris Jericho. I feel that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. I've had a string of bad luck throughout my AEW career. I don't know, because they don't communicate with me. It's one of those where, I don't know, I have mixed emotions about backstage heat for causing injuries. I think if you get a reputation for it, it's one thing. I think if it's just a freak accident, and we talked the other day, and not to bring it back to it, but we talked the other day about Ridge Bloody Holland and the incident with Big E.
Yes.
I think, to be honest, this ain't ballet, Andy, and, accidents do happen. Obviously, it's understandable that they got annoyed that they had to delay the Eddie Kingston-Chris Jericho stuff, and we sat here as fans and was like, why are they taking their bloody time on this? But it's wrestling. You're swinging punches and kicks and chucking people about. These things happen.
Things do happen, yeah. The other side of this report is PW Insider's Mike Johnson, who has confirmed Joey's suspicions and said that he'd kind of developed a bit of a reputation for people who'd worked with him had come out of matches hurt and stuff like that. So it's like
working a little bit too stiff.
Yeah, exactly. I never want to become one of those people who sits on social media and goes, this person is dangerous, this person is dangerous, this person is dangerous, get them out of the ring, they're on train, all of that. I hate that whole movement. It's garbage. So I'm not going to sit here and try and police wrestlers and stuff like that. It's not our place. But
Officer Andy would be a great gimmick.
That would be really bad. Really bad. The big hoss, man. I'm not that much of a hoss. That's an issue. But yeah, here we go. Something happened. Got a little bit of heat for it. That is how it goes.
Yes.
That's the extent of my analysis. We're not sitting here and calling Ridge Holland dangerous because of what happened on SmackDown. We're not going to sit here and go, this is a disgrace either, because that's not how we roll. It just sucks all round, I think.
Yeah.
And best of luck to Joey though. I like Joey Janela a lot. I particularly like that he pisses off the right people on social media. He's very good at that.
He's liked a few tweets in response to our stories recently of people being knobheads on Twitter, basically.
He knows exactly what he's doing, man. He's a smart guy with a good mind for getting over in the modern era. He'll be absolutely fine.
Absolutely.
Coming out of this. Right. You know who else is absolutely fine coming out of recent events?
Not Wardlow. No. That's what you get, you prick!
One day we'll do the news as a shoot. Thunder Rosa, she's the women's champion. She won the AEW Women's World Championship on last night's episode of Dynamite. Big cage match, Britt Baker, you know the drill. They've been feuding for ages. This was set up at Revolution, or technically set up last week when Thunder Rosa beat Layla Hirsch, but you know what happened at Revolution with the interferences and stuff. Chaotic cage match. Bit messy at points, but I felt it kind of had a right to be messy.
Yes.
Do you want cage matches to be clean and clinical where everything's crisp and smooth? No, you want to look like a rough fight. It was a really good time. Lots of plunder. No interference.
Some rough bumps in there. Yeah,
people's foreheads getting cheese grated on the steel mesh. No interferences. Good. And eventually Thunder Rosa ended up putting Britt Baker away with the Fire Thunder driver. I think it was the Fire...
Yeah,
it was.
You got it right.
Onto some thumbtacks that Aubrey Edwards counted on the thumbtacks.
You see that picture of her arm?
She's solid, man. Fair play. There was a ref bump. There was shenanigans afoot.
Quite the ref. Ref bumps normally, they just go, bumped into you. He took a... Was it Paul Turner?
Paul Turner,
took a fair old kick to the face there.
Yep, I will take this super kick as a shoot. But there you go. Thunder Rosa is the Women's World Champion. Britt Baker's reign ends on 9-10 months. We all saw this coming, but sometimes in pro wrestling, the predictable outcome is the right outcome.
I will say this, exactly. First of all, you're quite right. And I was not happy at Revolution. It was bollocks what happened there.
Wasn't good.
The world title match.
Wasn't good.
But it was all worth it for this. Well, maybe it wasn't worth it, but see, if you take that away and just remember this bit, great, lovely sort of cyclical St. Paddy's Day slam story between these two. Like you say, just bonkers stuff they did in the match. The right winner, the hometown victory, confetti. You've probably seen the videos of her celebrating with the crowd after the show went off the air. Lovely stuff. Just a quick note, you talked about championship matches there. There was another championship match last night. Did Wardlow leave us TNT champion? You can just check your notes.
You already did your gimmick. You don't have to.
Whoops. How do you like it? How do you like it? Taste.
Anyway.
Can we get to mention the new names for Matt and Jeff or no?
That was weird. Because I quite like the names, right? Cool Hand Ange. That's awesome. What's Chris Jericho talking about? Like it was a stupid idea from Bad Creative. They were called Chase Parker and Matt Martell. Yeah. That was their... strange.
You know what they say? That's
weird.
Entertainment.
Yeah. Good segment. I like the segment.
Yeah, really good. Let's talk a little bit about Jonathan Gresham, one of the hottest free agents. Current Ring of Honor World Champion.
He is.
Yeah, technically. He beat Jay Lethal for a final battle in December, of course. And he is, according to Fightful Select, no crap, just sap. He did the thing. He did the thing. He is in conversations with AEW. No great shock, this. I think we've reported on a couple of occasions that Gresham has been backstage at some of these AEW shows. Andy Murray, you have heart eyes whenever I mention Jonathan Gresham. Tell the people why he would be a great addition to this roster.
Because he's at minimum like the third best technical wrestler in the world. And, maybe as a pure technician, the absolute best. He's in the Bryan Danielson, Zack Sabre Jr. conversation. He's a guy who could have a good match with me. Like, literally. Like, his floor is like a 3-star match. Like, he could wrestle a chair and it would be good. And his ceiling is as high as anyone in the game. This guy is absolutely fantastic. He carried much of Ring of Honor programming on his back during a very difficult pandemic era. Their shows were... the endeavor was there, and I admire the company for paying everyone throughout the pandemic, but the in-studio atmosphere was very difficult. Gresham was the guy who kind of elevated that. He is, I think the guy is absolutely fantastic in the ring, and a no-brainer signing. He's just a fantastic pro wrestler.
Yeah, he's so talented technically, and I think he'd be a great... He's one of those people where, again, I go, stop signing people, AEW. What's that? Jonathan Gresham? All right, maybe one more.
Oh, yeah, he's really good, so yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he ends up fitting it. Like, they've produced promotional materials for, like, the Tony Khan umbrella of promotions, so it'll be interesting to see if he ended up just doing Ring of Honor, he's a world champion, fair play, or if he ended up doing both, or whatever. It's interesting nonetheless, and I think he'd be a great guy to have on that Ring of Honor show.
Tony Khan only uses his umbrella when it's rainy days. Also, Jonathan Gresham, WCPW alumni. You're welcome, Tony. Right, let's move on to your Twitter questions at WhatCulture WWE, of course. First question today comes from Kyle G. Green. Interesting question, this, considering what's gone on recently. Is AEW overdoing the thumbtacks? Why does every extreme match have to have them?
I don't think so. Like, a lot of people talk about this, and it's dealer's choice, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't like seeing a lot of plunder matches on TV and specific weapons and spots within them, you are more than entitled to say, hey, this is a little bit too much for me. But for me personally, I like them. So it's like, there's no objective right or wrong answer to this. It's personal taste. So I'll absolutely hear arguments that you do them too often. Fair play, that's up to you. But for me, I still enjoy them. So no, I don't care.
I did like the fact that JR tried to say, why are they under the ring? Yeah. And they went, probably because Britt who introduced them? Yeah, Britt did introduce them. Probably because Britt wants to introduce them, especially with the history these two had of just pissing blood everywhere.
Yes, exactly.
And the sadistic nature of Punk versus MJF sort of justified it. Like, I'm not saying that next week Jungle Boy versus Wheeler Yuta needs to happen, for example. Especially not now Wheeler Yuta's a hard bastard and gets slapped in the face by William Regal.
Gets slapped up by Bill.
But I'd say, maybe like what's the phrase? Is moratorium? Maybe like
I don't know.
I don't know what the phrase is. I think I'm right.
Motorhome.
Yeah. Just let's not have them for a bit now, because there's nothing that really can justify it for the time being.
Sure.
But I get where you're coming from, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, me too. I like them. So.
Right. Next question today comes from Big Mike.
Big Mike.
Oh, God, we've done.
Oh, not that Big Mike, fortunately.
Yeah, said no, not that one.
The good Big Mike.
Big Mike says, with Wheeler Yuta stepping up to Regal, I knew there was a reason I mentioned him, and maybe being the first recruit, and Garcia is a sports entertainer now, of
that
course.
was so great. What a subversion.
Who is next for Regal's gaggle of bastards? I saw Josh Woods, Ring of Honor Pure Champ on Dark, and he looked perfect for it. Who else, would you like to see join Mox and Danielson?
Yeah, Josh Woods has worked a few of these shots now, and if you wanted somebody in particular to represent this group in Ring of Honor, he's a great shout because he's the pure champion and he's a pure tough wrestling dude, and he'd fit that. Yeah, that's a really good shout. I do think Moriarty.
Yeah,
I know
it's
an obvious one, but it's a good line to draw because the criticism of Lee Moriarty, and I think Lee Moriarty is fantastic, but the criticism of his, and it does have some merit, is that sometimes he's not the most aggressive guy in the ring. He's kind of he comes across as just a really chill, likable guy, and sometimes in a pro wrestling match you want a bit more just punch in the face. That's been a shoot criticism of his work, whether you agree with it or not. And who better to impart that upon him than Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley, and William Regal? I think it's perfect.
It's a terrifying stable, that, isn't it?
Really?
I think I've got to say, you're right. That's what I was going to say as well. But let us know your thoughts in the comments, because if it's a stable, you can almost put anyone in, because those three can mould any old bit of clay. But let us know your thoughts in the comments section.
I think they could make Marco Stunt look like Stan Hansen.
Yeah, exactly.
No disrespect to Marco.
No. I'm going to have Fuego del Sol in there, in fact.
What about Fuego too? What's he up to these days?
Indeed.
We haven't spoken about him today, have we?
Thank Christ.
Yep.
Third question today comes from me. And if you don't like it,
What?
piss off. Andy, what day is it tomorrow?
Friday, baby.
Yeah, and what happens on Friday on the news?
We get flat as
Yes, and we get fun questions from you guys. Not your usual wrestling questions, just any old mad bollocks.
Yes.
So I thought, as a sort of tee-up to this, I'll give them a nice example. Although it is wrestling related still. Right, because I saw this story today about... We love covering topical stuff. We're going to segue into hosting Good Morning Britain, right?
Obviously.
Pete Davidson has got Kim Kardashian's name branded into his skin, apparently. So, my question to you, Andy, is if you had to get one wrestler's name branded into your skin, who would it be?
Branded into his skin.
Branded into his skin, that's what it says.
What?
Celebrities are weird, man.
Pete, brother, get a tattoo. Seriously.
Yeah.
Branded?
Yeah, I've only ever seen that on Jackass.
What? That's disgusting.
Or people when they're getting tortured.
It shows his devotion, I guess.
Yeah,
It
so-
shows his devotion. Probably Fat Barrel Boy, because it's an accurate description of what I am. So there you go. Yes.
I think I'd have...
Legend of Juggalo Championship Wrestling,
Yes.
for those who don't know. Jeez. Google him, he looks...
When I say, I did say name, didn't I? I was going to say we can have a picture of them or not, like Steve-O has on his back of himself.
Yeah.
I might get... I tell you what, can I have something a little bit different, right? I've talked about this before. Not a name, but Titus doing the hurrah, hurrah, hurrah pose all across my back. A huge brand. I'll let you do it. You can do it.
Cool.
I trust you.
What was it? Who was the UFC fighter who had the terrible Johnny Cash tattoo?
Oh, yes, I can't
was
remember.
Just the word. It looked like an Elvis mask. It was Alan Belcher.
That might be right there.
Google that as well. That's the opposite of what you want. Pete Davidson should have got that instead of a branding.
Yeah, Alan Belcher and, of course, his brother, Dave Burper. So, let's move on to today's and
Frankie
finally.
Farter.
That's the uncle. Let's move on to today's and finally. Everyone, Andy Murray, has been talking about the control your narrative rules. Rule number 1, you are in control. Number 2, you are in control! Rule number 3, rule number 5, by the way, you're not in control because we can't do these moves, right? Someone pointed that out on I think on Instagram, possibly. Yeah. All Elite George, no relative of All Elite Scooby-Doo, of course.
How do you know?
Wrote rules 1 and 2 slightly contradict rule 5, as I alluded to there. Did you see EC3's response to this?
I didn't.
EC3 wrote, life is a contradiction.
Oh, that's deep, man. That's deep. These control your narrative guys are on a different level, aren't they?
I absolutely simultaneously love and hate all
You
this.
see Braun the other day on Instagram, I think it was, going, hey, we don't do any of that acrobatic flipping crap. It's like, brother, you did a swamp fight.
You're a choo-choo boy who was tag team champs with a 10-year-old.
Your website is taking shots at big seasoning. What is going on here? I tell you what, the marketing for this show, I don't think it's a work or a rib, but I do think they're playing up because they see how kind of silly, like big seasoning. What are you on about?
Well, let us know how you control your narrative in the comment section below, as well as your thoughts on all of today's news stories and what wrestling name you'd like to have branded on you. So it's comment section is going to be wild today, Andy.
It's going to be fun.
Plus, you let us know your thoughts and Twitter questions. Fun Twitter questions for tomorrow, Andy. It's Friday after all.
Big Dumb Friday, baby.
At WhatCulture WWE, and send your fun Twitter questions and just bants to Andy on Twitter.
Make them good. Andy H. Murray. The H stands for hey, watch out for big content.
You can follow me at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. And make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts from. For daily wrestling podcast, myself and the Daddy Boys sitting down to review AEW Dynamite a little bit later on today.
The Fiend has let
They're
them
back
out.
at the same time, Andy.
Yeah.
What a coincidence that is.
Very fiendish.
Right, we'll see you tomorrow. My thanks to Andy Murray. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Ask questions.